Hi friends, we're going to do something that I think will be a little bit different. I've been tossing some ideas around in my head for a while now to kind of revisit my childhood and some of the things that stand out when I think back, and one of those things involves like some of my old favorite TV shows. I've shared with you before, we didn't have a TV until I was about 8 years old, which would be, 69 or 70, probably right around in there. And so a lot of the shows that have become favorites of mine and that I think about when I consider what I watched way back when was watched after. So like when it was reruns or after it became syndicated. Now some of the shows we're going to talk about, they ran for so long that they were still on the air, even years and years and years after they started. So we had a TV and I was able to watch. And initially I was going to cover stuff up through like the 2000s until I spent time considering what shows I enjoyed enough to want to share it with you, with the goal being that some of these, I hope a lot of them, are shows that you haven't thought about in a while. I want it to be not necessarily forgotten shows, but just stuff that maybe it hadn't entered your mind in a while, because it hadn't entered my mind in a while until I sat down and decided I was going to start thinking about what old shows did I really like to watch. So all of the shows I'm going to talk about today are shows that I actually watched. Some of them, years after they aired because, A, we didn't have a TV and for whatever reason I didn't know about it. But a lot of them that I did watch while they were on the air. Now, some of them, they were favorites. I chose them, I liked them, and I was excited about them. And then there are a couple that I was introduced to, so to speak, because one or both of my parents really enjoyed watching them. But they've become favorites of mine as well, and they were such a consistent part of the routine that we didn't miss these shows when they came on, so they're on the list as well. There were lots of others that I could have put on the list. Feel free to sound off on ones that we don't talk about today that mean something to you for various reasons, and I'll break up this concept into at least a couple of different videos because there were other things that kind of tie back to these same time periods in my life that could have been included, but golly, I don't want to do a 4-hour video, so I'm going to try to keep it concise. What we'll do is I'm going to play a clip from one of these favorite old shows of mine, and then we'll talk a little bit about the main characters, the actors that played the main characters in the story. A lot of them are no longer with us. That's not a surprise. And some trivia about the show, just little mix and match stuff to maybe make it more interesting. And if you see something that's new to you, I'd love you to check it out. There's lots of places you can stream a lot of these today. And if you see something that is familiar to you that you hadn't thought about in a while, maybe you'll still go back and watch an episode or two somewhere. So let's get started. I don't think there's anything else I need to do to set it up for you. And I'm just going to, again, be playing clips and then pausing, and we'll go from there. So hang on one second. I'm going to move something out of the way here. I am recording with OBS Studio, so I'm still trying to figure out, the best ways to make that work. So apologies if it's not the kind of experience you're hoping for, but I think we're going to have a fun time. So let's get started with the first show on my list of forgotten old favorites from the TV series world. All right, here comes the first one.
ride a cloud of dust and a hearty hi-yo silver. The Lone Ranger.
All right, so let me pause it now, and let's do some Lone Ranger, I don't know, little known facts. Maybe they're common facts. I know I learned some things about the shows as I was exploring and researching to do the video today. So as you could see, I had the little banner up at the top as soon as the clip, or right after the clip started, to let you know how long the show ran and what years. So this show, of course, ran from 1949 to 1957, which means that it was not something I could watch while it aired. I was born in 1962, but I checked it out as soon as I could. So it starred Clayton Moore as the Lone Ranger and Jay Silverheels as his sidekick Tonto. And let me get to some facts about the show itself, and then we'll talk about the actors. So regarding one of the characters on the show, this is all going to be from IMDb. There's a great little trivia section and everything you could want to know about the show. And this, from IMDb, the first little piece of trivia is that the Lone Ranger's young nephew on the show, Dan Reed, the character, or the actor's name was Dan Reed, who appeared occasionally, was the father of Britt Reed, the Green Hornet. Some of you may be familiar with the Green Hornet. I don't have anything about the Green Hornet on the video today, except that there's that little tidbit about Dan Reed being the Green Hornet's real-life parent. And the hi-ho silver that everybody is familiar with, that the Lone Ranger says when he's on riding silver, that shout at the beginning of each episode is actually a recording of Earl W. Grazer, who played the Lone Ranger on the radio between 1933 and 1941. So long before it was a TV show. The 5th season of this show is in color, so about half and half. It was black and white, obviously, for the first 4 seasons, and then it switched to color. And I've seen the black and white and the color seasons. In the early 50s, the show was so popular that ABC briefly repeated the Thursday night show on Friday nights for people that might have missed it on Thursday nights, because so many people loved it. And that was long before we had video on demand or recording like you can do now with everything, or downloading. You just had to hope that you were going to be home near a TV when the show came on, or that you would catch it during rerun season. There didn't used to be mid-season replacements. Back in the day, the show would air for 20 or 30 or whatever episodes, and then they would just show reruns until it was time for the new season to start. Let's see if there's anything else we can talk about as far as trivia. Clayton Moore and Jay Silverheels had to do most of their own stunts as well as makeup. And that kind of leads me to, we'll talk a little bit about the actors themselves. So Clayton Moore, let me give you some info on him. It's interesting, he's listed second on IMDb when it's got the cast here. But he was born in September of 1914 and lived to December of 1999, passing away at the age of 85 from a heart attack. I think that's what I read. Let me get back down here. Yes, a heart attack. He was 6'1". I always remember he seemed kind of tall. And he did commercials for Cheerios. Another little piece of trivia, it says there was a mail-in offer for a Lone Ranger rapid fire revolver that was associated with the Cheerios campaign. So now Jay Silverheels, let's learn a little bit about him. And he was actually an Indian. Okay, come on, you can do it. He was born in May of 1912, and he passed away in March of 1980 at the age of 67 due to a stroke. So he was born in Canada, It's funny, I don't even think about Indian reservations in Canada, but he was born on Canada's Six Nations Reserve and was one of 10 children. When he first entered Hollywood, he was a stunt man. I thought that was kind of interesting too. But, you know, both of these guys I feel like will forever be known as the Lone Ranger and Tonto. All right, so let's play our next clip. And let me know if this is a show that you watched, that you loved. I did love it. You guys know I'm a horse lover, so of course that appealed to me. But back in the day, you know, there were a lot of Westerns on TV back then. As you'll see, there were other kinds of shows as well, but that same theme, there was another show that's not on my list. It's even more obscure than The Lone Ranger, but it was kind of a Western-y show, a very similar concept to The Lone Ranger. But let's see what we've got coming up here next. And I wasn't quite as crazy about Superman as I was The Lone Ranger, maybe because there weren't animals in Superman. I wonder how that would have gone. If Superman rode a horse or had a horse, I wonder if I would have loved it even more. But just that whole fantasy kind of thing, the outer space element, you know, that he came here from another planet, that was always an interesting part of the story for me. So let's start with a little bit of did you know about the show. George Reeves, who played Superman, was the only person to play Superman in all 104 episodes of the show. And again, the show ran from, I left that part of the page. You can see it at the top, but I should start with that. From 1952 to 1958 for 104 episodes. So George Reeves was the only Superman. Let's see what else we can learn about the show. After his death, his real-life death, producers considered continuing the series with Jimmy Olsen becoming the main character, which we'll get to him. He was one of the leads in the show, and including stock footage of Reeves as Superman. But Jack Larson rejected the idea. Let's see. With the death of Noel Neill, who played Lois Lane, on July 3rd, 2016, Phyllis Coates was the last surviving regular cast member of the series until she passed away in October of 2023. And then Josh Hamilton, who played Perry White, he's the editor of the newspaper, had trouble remembering his lines. And the solution was to film him sitting at his desk with the desk littered with papers, including the script, so he could glance down to be prompted for his next line. Kind of like I'm glancing down now to see my page that's got the trivia on it. The series was filmed in black and white during its first 2 seasons, and I never thought about this. I never really think about in a black and white movie, especially when your brain knows what color they're wearing, because there's either a colorized version somewhere or it changed to color filming at some point. But during the black and white seasons, George Reeves' Superman costume consisted of brown in places where there was red, gray in places where there was blue, and white in places where there was yellow. Then obviously when the show went to color, it switched to the iconic red and blue suit that we all know and associate with Superman. There's just a little bit of trivia about the show, and let's get to the individual actors that were on the show. So George Reeves, again, Superman himself, probably the quintessential Superman. I think Dean Cain is also a very well-known Superman, and that's more because of the Adventures of Lois and Clark TV show that was on for a while. And then, of course, Christopher Reeve was the ultimate movie Superman. I don't think anyone would argue with me about that. But George Reeves, let's see. George Reeves was born in January of 1914, and he passed away in June of 1959 at the age of 45. Sadly enough, it was due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Many of you were already aware of that, but it's a sad reminder.
A few moments later.
Okay, and Noel Neill, who played Lois Lane. And it's funny, I look at this old picture of her. If you ask me, I couldn't imagine in my brain, I could not think about who Lois Lane or what she looked like in the show. And so when I see the pictures of her even on IMDb, I don't remember her from the show at all. I remember the other two people that we're going to cover, but I don't remember her at all. Isn't that sad? She was born in November of 1920 and passed away in July of 2016 at the age of 95 after a long illness. It just says long illness on IMDb, so it doesn't give me any information on what that illness might have been. And now I think it is Jack Larson, who played Jimmy Olsen. So I've seen him in some other things. Can't tell you what it is, but I don't only know him from Superman, but he's among the more familiar actors from the show. So Jimmy Olsen. Okay, let's don't have computer problems now. Was born in February of 1928 and passed away in September of 2015. Just due to natural causes. He was 87 years old. Now we'll go to the editor, Perry White, who was played by the actor John Hamilton. I think he was already much older than the rest of the cast. Yes, so he was born in January of 1887 and died in October of 1958 at the age of 71. Due to, does this tell me? A heart attack. And I don't remember him from anything else. But here on his IMDb page, it shows he did a lot of things prior to his character in The Adventures of Superman. All right, let's close this and move to our next clip.
Starring June Lockhart, Hugh Riley, John Provost as Timmy, and, of course, Lassie.
Okay, so Lassie. Oh, I loved that show. You know I'm a dog lover. I'm an animal lover in general, but obviously dogs are a little higher on the list maybe than other animals. That ran for 20 years, so it's definitely something I watched after, it had been running, and it was both in reruns and had new episodes coming out. That show, one of the things I remember about that show is that it came on Sunday nights. I remember that because we would go to church and then we would have to come home from church and take a bath. I can still remember how fast I would take a bath on Sundays because I wanted to watch Lassie after I got out of the bathtub. So that's how I know it came on Sunday nights, because we would come home from church. And then it was Sunday night was bath night, back when you didn't take a bath every day. So the dog Lassie they all looked alike, right? But the Lassie that played in the series, I think the longest, was actually a male. They had another dog, a female dog, and Lassie, the character, was supposed to be a female. But this dog, I think, had auditioned for the part and was the stunt dog, if I remember correctly. That may be in some of this trivia we're going to talk about. And he got the part. He took the part from her. So Pal, his name was Pal, and if I remember correctly, we'll find out when we look at his IMDb profile. I think it'll show me. Lived to be 18 years old, which isn't that awesome. So let's see some trivia about the show. Oh, is there any trivia about the show? Oh, here's the Did You Knows. Okay. This first one, this is funny. Although it has been the subject of many spoofs and misquotes, the one situation that Timmy never needed saving from in the entire history of the show was falling down a well. So yeah, my whole life I've heard people make fun of that, say, "What is it, girl? Oh, Timmy fell in a well?" He never fell in a well. He never needed to be rescued from falling in a well on the show. So yeah, here's some trivia on the dog that played Lassie. Pal, the first ever dog to play the legendary dog Lassie in Lassie Come Home, a movie that came out just before, well, not just before, 10 years or so before the show started, appeared in the pilot of this TV series. But it was his last appearance before his death in 1958. So this show again ran from 54 to 74. And that pilot was broadcast as the first 2 episodes. Okay, so Pal lived to be 18. This was one of the first long-running television shows to remain in its time slot and day of the week during its entire primetime run on a U.S. television network. It became a syndicated program for the last 3 years of its run. Let's see. The collie that played Lassie the longest was named Baby. I had a German Shepherd Chow dog once upon a time named Baby. Baby was the grandson of Pal, the original Lassie. Baby played the role for 6 years until he suddenly died at the age of 8. He's the only Lassie not to live to the age of 17, to at least the age of 17. And then regarding, we'll go ahead and say this because it's in the trivia for the show. John Provost, who played Timmy, left the series after 7 seasons because he got tired of playing the role of Timmy. This made it necessary to fire the rest of the human cast. The cast speculated that either Provost or new star Robert Bray wanted too much money, but Provost did not want to continue playing a naive child into his teenage years. So that's kind of interesting. So we learned a little bit already about Lassie, the star of the show. And then let's learn a little bit more about John Provost, who played Timmy. So John Provost was born in March of 1950. He's still alive and well as of now. And it looks like his most recent work was in 2023. He was in an episode of a show called Heroes of Extinction. I haven't heard of that show, but he's done a good number. He's got a nice long list here. He's got some gaps. Looks like he didn't do much between the early 90s and the late 2000s, but then he's had little parts here and there. And he lives in, does it say? No, it just says that he was born in Los Angeles, California. And let's look at, so one of these other names, this next name, June Lockhart, that played the mom. Right. You, I would imagine, would know her from the very popular Lost in Space series. That's the first thing I think of when I see her name. And she was in an episode of the 2021 Lost in Space TV series that, kind of rebooted the show for a season or 2. It was pretty good. And there was a movie. There was also a Lost in Space movie. But let's see. So she was born June 25th of 1925. She is still alive today as well. Go back now and look at Dad. Oops. Looks like Dad was played by Hugh Riley. And he was born in October of 1915. He passed away in July of 1998 at the age of 82 due to emphysema. So let me just look at the other characters and see if there's anyone else that might ring a bell. Okay, so here's the Lassie that was in 367 episodes of the show, and then another Lassie that was in 170 episodes of the show. Let's see who these dogs are. So this is the dog that was in 170 episodes. Contrary to popular belief, Lassie was actually a laddie. The female collie originally cast as the lovable canine was replaced due to her excessive shedding of fur during production of Lassie Come Home. That makes me think she was probably really stressed out. And replaced with a more impressive-looking male animal named Pal. Okay, Pal was born in 1940. He's the one that lived to be 18. Okay. So it doesn't tell me about this dog that was in 170 episodes, unless I'm just not understanding this right. But let's get back to the videos and look at what's up next. Sorry, I had to run this back a little bit. It's hard to know how much space to leave between clips when I'm going to be playing a video. while recording a video. Who knows what this show is? This is hard to find. Any guesses? Oh, well, it already showed you, didn't it? Oh.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, Truman Bradley.
Okay, that is the one and only Science Fiction Theater, not to be confused with Mystery Science Theater 3000. I have had people think I'm talking about the other when I'm talking about one of them. This is a favorite old show of mine, and I did not watch this when it was playing live. It ran from 1955 to 1957, but came across it just because I'm a sci-fi nerd, and over the years I've enjoyed watching it. You used to be able to find episodes on YouTube, but I'm guessing somebody's really holding on to the copyright reins tightly, because I have not been able to find it. I think I may have seen that you can pay to rent it on Amazon Prime, but I'll have to double check that. Well, this page usually tells me. So IMDb usually tells you where you can watch whatever it is you're looking at, and this doesn't show that it's available anywhere right now. So slim pickings on being able to watch any episodes. But it was a little bit ahead of its time. So it was science fiction, but the stories would be based on an actual scientific discovery or technology, something that was happening at the time, or that was close enough to something that was real at the time, that it just made it a little more exciting. And it was just well done. That Truman Bradley guy, I know he did other things. In fact, I know he was the announcer for Roma Wines. They had radio commercials that used to come on, and I only know that because I've heard them when I listen to some of the old CBS Radio Mystery Theater that still has the advertisements in it. He was the spokesman for that. But let's see. Let's get some trivia about the show. It really was a good show. And we won't talk about anyone but Truman Bradley now, because every show just had different, stars that acted in whatever the story was. And the storyline, this should sum it up for you. Science Fiction Theater was a science fiction anthology series. The series narrator was Truman Bradley, who introduces stories extrapolated from actual scientific data available in the 1950s, concentrating on such concepts as spaceflight, UFOs, and mental telepathy. And I've got my favorite episodes of the show. I'm glad now I got to watch them when I did. Let's see. So trivia about the show. In contrast to the standard procedure in the 1950s, the first season of this show was filmed in color, and then to cut costs, the second season was in black and white. The producers had originally thought that color TV would progress faster than it did. Let's see what else we can share in the way of trivia. As already noted, I don't know where, this show was mentioned in Back to the Future between Crispin Glover and Michael J. Fox. Coincidentally, an actor named Michael Fox, no relation, appears in 7 episodes of the series. This actor, who worked until the 1990s, is a reason the J had to be inserted in Michael J. Fox's name. There's some trivia for you. The reason it says as already noted is because the next thing on this list of trivia references that mentioning of the show in Back to the Future. Among the directors hired for the series were ones who would become famous for directing science fiction / horror feature films, including Jack Arnold, Herbert L. Strock, Lou Landers, and William Castle. As much of a horror fan as I am, I can't tell you anything off the top of my head that any of those guys directed. Let's see. The vibrating dish in the opening credits is an aircraft radar antenna when it's powered on. That's funny. So now about Truman Bradley. Oops. And it had a lot of familiar actors. Most of them were actors that I don't really know, couldn't tell you what else they did. But that one guy, that Marshall Thompson guy, was in the 7 episodes, and you would recognize him if you saw him. Truman Bradley was born in February of 1905 and died in July of 1974. Doesn't say what his cause of death was, though, here at the page. But there's one of my old favorites, too. Let's see what we have coming up next. Oops. Oh, I loved that show. I looked and looked and looked for years to find some place to watch that and couldn't. And just recently, if you are not familiar with Tubi TV, it's a free streaming service. They have this there. Another thing I'd been looking for, I didn't include it on this list because it's not so unknown, was Gilligan's Island. I loved that show, but there was nowhere to watch it. I had not found anywhere to watch it. And a lot of these, they used to be syndicated and you could find it just on TV. But I don't think they really do that as much anymore. There's so much new stuff. I don't feel like they show the old shows in reruns anymore at all. But Tubi TV has Gilligan's Island too. But Tubi TV has Fury. Again, you see that kind of Western theme and the animals that were just my favorite shows when I was a little girl. This ran from 55 to 60 for 116 episodes. And let's get to some did you knows about the show. Highland Dale, who is the horse that played Fury in the show, was paid $1,500 per episode plus 5% of the show's profits, which was more than the human stars. This was 1955 to 1960, and the show ran, again, what did I say, for 116 or 115 episodes? That horse was a millionaire. That was a lot of money back then. $1,500. Now, today, that's a lot of money for me. This was the program that the boy fell in the well and his horse, Fury, summoned help. So we just talked about how it's kind of been the running joke that, Lassie goes running home and they say, "What is it, girl? What is it? Did Timmy fall in the well?" This is the show where somebody fell in a well. The incident sparked the urban legend that Lassie saved Timmy when he fell in the well. But that never happened on Lassie. That happened on Fury in the Boy Scout story episode. How funny is that? Fury was an American registered saddlebred who was 15 hands high and had a kept weight of 1,000 pounds. The series Fury was one of the first TV series ever on German television. Fury, whose name was actually Highland Dale, is the same horse that starred as Wildfire in The Return of Wildfire in 1948. I'm not familiar with that movie, though. I don't know if it's a movie or a TV show. And now let's look at some of the actors in the show. So Peter Graves, I love Peter Graves, but when I think of Peter Graves, even as much as I love Fury, it's from his, he is like the quintessential late 50s B-film sci-fi movie star. And I think, was he in the Airplane movies too? I know Leslie Nielsen is in the Airplane movies. I mean, a great actor all around. And, there's lots of love for him in the MST3K community because a lot of those movies have focused on the old black and white B-film sci-fi and horror movies, and Peter Graves is in a lot of them. So Peter Graves was born in March of 1926, and he died in March of 2010 at the age of 83 because of a heart attack. Just always seemed like a nice guy, smart guy. His brother is James Arness, who was on the long-running Gunsmoke show. And also James Arness played the Thing in that original old movie, The Thing. He was the Thing monster because he was like 6'10", very tall. This shows here that Peter Graves was 6'3". So I think James Arness is the younger of the brothers. But so he's the star. He's the dad, Mr. Newton, on the show. And then his ranch hand, Pete, was played by the actor William Fawcett, who was born in September of 1894 and died in January of 1974 due to natural causes. at the age of 79. Now, let's see. I think the boy now will be the next. Yeah, Bobby Diamond. He's gone on to do some other things, but I can't tell you what he might have been in. So he was born in August of 1943, passed away in May of 2019 at the age of 75 due to cancer. And then Highland Dale, I think he's the next one on the list. Yeah, Highland Dale played Fury. And he was born in March of 1943 and died in 1973. 30 years, I mean, that's good for a horse. You know, obviously this horse was well cared for and probably lived a pretty posh existence, even though he was pretty busy doing TV shows. He did do other shows besides Fury. I don't know, I wonder how much money he made for the other shows. With the last appearance being in an episode of Lancer in 1968. I just want to see who the next actor is, and then we'll decide if it's somebody that was a main character enough to know. There's a lot of repeat characters in the show, but nobody that was as big as Fury and Peter Graves. All right, let's see what I have next on the list.
The Rifleman. Starring Chuck Connors.
I like that show. Again, do you see the Western theme? How funny. Like, I don't watch a lot of Western movies. One of my favorite Western movies is The Rare Breed with Jimmy Stewart, Brian Keith, Maureen O'Hara, and one of the Mills. Who's the oldest of the Mills? You know, there's Haley Mills and Juliet Mills. I actually think it was the girl because she plays the daughter of Maureen O'Hara. That's a sweet movie. The Rare Breed. Y'all need to watch that. But the Chuck Connors, I know he's done other things and I've seen him in other things, but I'll always just think of him as, you know, the Rifleman. Again, another show that's really hard to find. Let's do a little about the show and some trivia. Storyline. Widower Lucas McCain can fire a round with his specially modified Winchester in 0.3 of a second. Added to his high moral code and resolve, added to his high moral code and resolve, that seems a weird way to word this, enable him to help Marshal Micah Torrance maintain order in town while raising his son Mark on a ranch near North Fork, New Mexico. And under the Did You Knows for the Rifleman, in the pilot originally written for Gunsmoke, Chuck Connors' character was named John McCain. He had no children and he was a dead shot with a pistol. Arnold Lavin decided to make McCain a widower with a son whose weapon of choice was a customized Winchester rifle. Chuck Connors initially turned down the role of Lucas McCain because the salary was too low. The show's producers considered James Whitmore and John Anderson for the role, but when they saw Connors' chemistry with Tommy Kirk in Old Yeller, they realized he was the best choice for the role. They made him another offer with a much higher salary, and he accepted. Sammy Davis Jr. appeared in 2 Ounces of Tin in 1962 as Outlaw Tip Corey. Sammy proved himself to be quite handy with a gun. His quick draws and twirling actions with the weapon were all done by him, not a stand-in. The cast and crew were very impressed with his skills. And this was the first network television series to portray a single parent raising a child. Wow, stuff you wouldn't even think about today, would you? And now, regarding the stars of the show, Chuck Connors was born in April of 1921, and he died in November of 1992 at the age of 71 due to lung cancer and pneumonia. He did, again, lots of other shows. Johnny Crawford, who played his son Mark McCain, I'm looking at this picture on IMDb now, and wow, I wouldn't know it's him. He was born in March of 1946 and died in April of 2021 at the age of 75 due to Alzheimer's disease. And we'll look for the Sheriff Micah, which was played by Paul Fix, and you'll recognize him from a lot of Westerns if you see him. I may go back and I'm talking as I'm recording. I'll go back and maybe put these pictures up, superimpose these on the screen for you. Paul Fix was born in March of 1901 and died in October of 1983 at the age of 82 due to kidney failure. Wow, let's see what we have next though. Join me tomorrow night for part 2 of my list of favorite but forgotten TV shows from the 60s and 70s, which made up my childhood. And thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you've already found some things that you'll want to check out. And I'll see you again soon. Be safe, be happy, be well. I love you all. Bye, friends.